So this is the second video of Theodore Klein's life, March 28, 2013. Did you have any siblings other than Alex and Eileen?
Yes. I had an older sister, which none of us knew, the firstborn. She was born in 1922, and she died. She was like 3 months old, and she died in crib death. And then a year later, my sister Eileen was born. And then 2 years later, my brother was born. And I was born 5 years later, 1930.
Did losing your older sister have any effect on your parents?
Well, when you lose a child, I assume that I wasn't even aware of it for many years that I had an older sister. Then I found out through the years that they had an older sister. I don't know. It never came up. It never came up in conversation in the house. So I guess they had heavy heart when they had to bury the baby. But that's what it is with life.
So what was life like in the Klein household? Was it a religious household? Yes.
The religious lifestyle was very strong, and was primarily influenced by my mother. My mother was very, very religious. You know, God was always in her lips. She always prayed, and as we were growing up, I remember when I was I could never leave the house even before I was bar mitzvah. I could never leave the house without davening every morning. When I went to school, I had to daven, whatever, just a few words, but I had to daven. My father wasn't that strict with us, but my mother was very strict with us. And so that's how we grew up, a very religious home. And later on, I remember when we were here in America, and I was already older. My brother was a teenager, so we had a lot of friends, primarily Goyish friends, and not necessarily Jewish kids, but they were not from observant families. My brother and I were the only two that went to shul on Shabbat. There was a lot of kids, with like 15, 20 kids in the neighborhood. But only one other family the son went to shul, was Moshe Mandel. He was, his father had a beard, and he was from a very strict family. But when we used to come home, I used to go to shul on Shabbos morning, and after shul, I used to come down and then sneak downstairs, and we used to play stickball.
This was in the United States already.
Yeah, yes.
But your father came from you said he came from a very learned father also. Did your father go to yeshiva?
No, I don't think so. I think everybody just went to cheder. In Europe, nobody went to yeshiva. Only the very, very bright students who were going for like the rabbinate were very bright, exceptionally bright. Most of the people just went to cheder, and you get the basics. I even had that was very cut for me. It was very short because after a few years they couldn't afford to pay a lamed anymore. So I didn't even have much education. But the fact that I davened every day and I struggled through the Ivrit, the Hebrew, so I got to go. I knew the liturgy. I got through the years. I learned to do all the liturgy, and I knew, what to say and everything. My brother was more learned. He had more learning in cheder than I did. He was older, but it was a very frum family. My father was easygoing, but my father came to America. He lived on his own for 18 years. He lived by himself. Whoever he lived with, I don't know. I remember one time he had a whole bunch of pictures of all these beautiful girls with bathing suits. So I don't know what he did in America, but he is a young guy. He was alone, and he had friends, and then he went back and he met my mother, and they got married. I guess they were pressuring him to get married because they wanted him to settle down over there.
How old was he when they got married?
He was 35.
Oh, so he was pretty old already.
He was pretty old already. Yeah.
Especially by the standards of the day.
1921. He was married in 1921. And he was born in 1887. December 17th, 1887.
And your mother, when was she born?
My mother was born in 1894, and she was like 26 when they got married.
Which would have been pretty old for that time as well.
Maybe, I don't know.
What was her birth date?
July 23rd, 1894. So we go back a long ways.
Especially 1887 is
1887 and 1894.
So, so back to the home life. When was Cheder run? How many hours a day was that? What was Cheder?
After school, we went to Cheder for an hour or two, and you learn with a bunch of other kids. It wasn't, it was whatever they taught me. They taught me the basics. I didn't really get learning too much. My brother learned much more. He knew more Chumash. I didn't learn anything like that. But through the years, I learned. I was self-taught. So, I always read, and I read to understand, and I read the portions in the Torah, so I understand. I got a much better insight of what was going on. But it's okay for my mother because she was very persistent. We could never leave the house in the mornings without putting on my tefillin. Also a few minutes, but we had to do it every morning.
And did you go to public school there also? Was there public school?
In Europe it was public school.
So what was public school like in Romania?
Very, very difficult for Jewish kids. I'll give you two examples of things that happened. My sister was maybe 4 years old, 3, 4 years old, and they were teaching him, they were learning the alphabet. So they called on my sister to do the alphabet, and she got mixed up between the E and the F, or F and the G. She said, reversed it or something, and the teacher came over with a bamboo stick and took her palm and smashed it across her hand. And what happened is that this thing split in two. That's how hard he hit her. And the bamboo stick went under her hand, under her skin. So they brought her home, and my mother went to school to complain, and nothing. It's all goyim. They forget about it. Nothing happened to it.
But do you think they did it because she was Jewish?
Yeah, they always had to. They always had to pay off. Everybody had to pay off these teachers, especially if you were Jewish. You had to give them whatever. So that's just one incident. I had an incident. I was maybe 6 years old, 7, and they were playing the national anthem. We were in the yard, and when you play the national anthem in Romania, you had to stand like a soldier, stiff. And what happened is that something distracted me, and I must have moved my head slightly, maybe an inch, half an inch. The next thing I know, she got a hold of my ear, and she twisted my ear, and I thought I'd die. She twisted it so hard, and I couldn't holler out because then she would have smacked me. So I just took it. I just, sucked up and took the pain. So I never forgot that when we came to America, so I went to assembly here, and what happened was, I didn't know English, but I saw, they're bringing in the flag, and everybody stood up, and it was assembly day. So I knew once I see the flag and everything up, and everybody stood up, so I stood up like a soldier, stiff. And I see all these kids in front of me, they were chewing gum, they were looking to the left, to the right, they were moving all over the place. And I said to myself, they were out of their minds, they're going to kill them, they won't survive. This is how you get conditioned. My mind was so conditioned that I couldn't believe that they could get away with something like that. So show you the mentality that we were up against in Europe.
Do you remember other stories from school in Europe? What was it like? What was the school building like?
Oh, I don't know. One incident I remember, I was in kindergarten, and I don't know what happened. The kid and I must have acted up a little bit, and the teacher took us down into the cellar. The judge had taken a 4- or 5-year-old kid down into the cellar, and there was only a little light way up on, a little transom light up on top. And she locked the door, and we were down there. The only thing we had down there was this boy and myself, and we had a little tricycle. So what we did was we rode the tricycle all over the place, but I couldn't imagine. Could you imagine locking a kid up into the basement? This is the kind of stuff that you were up against. And the Jewish kids suffered from these things more than the Goyim. They were out to get the Jews. The Jews were bright, whatever, but that's the nature of the beast.
Did you so back to your home life? So it was a religious
Oh, yeah.
home. Who was more dominant in the house, your mother or your father, would you say?
Well, my mother ran the house as far as cooking and making sure the kids had what to wear, what to do, make sure everything was okay. My father relied a lot on my mother. She used to help him in the grocery store. So, but my father, in Europe, the male is very dominant. That's what that society was. The male had all the rights. They had the primary rights, and that's how it was in Europe. Only America had changed, where women had more rights than the women.
And did so let's talk about your father a little bit. So
Okay.
tell us about your father.
Yeah, my father was a very nice guy. Everybody liked my father. He was a real nice man, and he had a lot of friends. Everybody always greeted him nicely, and he was always very good to his parents, and he was good to his siblings and to the children and to his wife. He was always good. So he was a nice fellow. I couldn't say anything negative about my dad. One interesting happened to me with my dad is that one day he was changing in the store. He was changing the fuse in the grocery store. He went up on the ladder, took out the fuse, and went out to get another fuse. And I was watching him. I'm like 5 years old. As soon as he left, boom, I was up the ladder, right? So I went up there and looking, I put my finger into the socket, and next thing I know, I was on the floor. Knocked me right off the ladder, and I was afraid to say anything because he would have killed me. I could have died. It was like 220 volts, those things in Europe. So that's one incident. And another beautiful, stupid stuff I did as a kid was he passed Christmas time or whatever, and it was business. So I helped him in a grocery store, and I took all the, and I was controlling some of the cash that people paid, and I put it in, and at the end of the day I put it into the scale. A lot of money I put in a scale. And he opened up the store right after Shabbat, and some guy came in, and he saw me there, and he took out the cash and walked out with it. And my father kept thinking, where's the money? So I finally told him he was going to kill me. Oh, my mother saved me. Because there was a lot of money we lost. One of my brilliant things I did.
Why were you putting it in the scale?
Because I didn't know as a kid. I kept thinking it's in the M. Maja. Maja means scale. But they didn't know what the M means. You know what I mean? If he knew I put it in a scale, he would have taken it out first thing Saturday night. All right, I shouldn't tell that story. It makes me look bad.
So what other kind of mischief did you get into?
Oh, what kind of mischief I got into? I don't know. No, I was pretty good kid, as a rule. You know, I did the mischief with the other kids, because I grew up on the street. Once we came to America, I grew up on the street. It was a big neighborhood. Everybody grew up on the street. Everybody went downstairs every day, and of course my favorite thing was I used to come home from high school, and I used to come home and I used to put my books down, and my mother would say, "Where are you going?" So I used to tell her, "I'm going to the library." And the library in our high school parlance was the pool room. So every day I went to the pool room right after we meet all the other guys, and we used to play pool, whatever. So that was my mischief.
Well, let's jump back to your father. So what was he like, personality-wise?
Yeah, my father was very easygoing, very nice to the children, and he was very sickly. And he didn't live long after we came to America. He had an ulcer, he had all kinds of problems. And so we came to America in 1939, and by March 1946, he died. Right on Rosh Chodesh Adar, he died. And what happened was that I had a very bad night that night when he died. That Saturday night, I went to the movies.
How old were you?
I was 16, 1946. I just turned 16, and he was working for Stride's Matzah Company before Passover. So he went to work that day, but he was very sickly. But that night when I came home from the movie, I went to sleep, and I had such a terrible dream all night. All night long I dreamt, and all I dreamt was a coffin with a black cover on it. All night long. And it sort of disturbed me, and it bothered me, and I couldn't relate to anything what it was. And sure enough, the next night he came back from work, and he was sick. He didn't feel good, and he died within an hour or so. So, you know, you say coincidence? Yeah, maybe. And it didn't just happen with me. It happened with my brother also. My brother was stationed in New Orleans. In New Orleans, he was in the Coast Guard during the Second World War, and he was stationed in New Orleans. And what happened was, he said that night he went to sleep, and a little dog came into his bunk. And this little dog went right under his bed. And the little dog was whimpering all night, crying all night, crying all night. You can't understand what's going on. And within an hour or two, the lieutenant came in with a telegram telling him that his father died.
Wow.
So,
Did he die during the night?
The what?
Did he die during the night?
No, he died like 7 p.m. or so.
In the hospital
So,
or in
no,
the house?
in the house. He died in the house. So we had to bury him because we didn't take him to any place. We couldn't stay 2 days over. We couldn't wait for my brother to come in. That means we'd have to lay with the body for another day in the house. So we decided that we're going to bury him on Monday. And
This was on a Sunday?
yeah, and we couldn't get help. We couldn't get a ambulance. We couldn't get a doctor. By the time we got help, it was too late. And it was one of those things.
Did he have a heart attack?
Yes.
Did you talk to him before he died?
I did. My mother did. My mother was in the room with him.
So you weren't in the room at the time?
No.
Did she know he was going to die?
I don't know.
Do you remember the last time you talked to him?
Yes, a little while earlier. He was having these pains, and he was smoking. And I said to him, Dad, why are you smoking? That smoking is not good for you. What are you smoking for? And he smoked, and we spoke a little bit. But that's the last time I sort of spoke to him. And so that's what it was. And the last time I saw him was when they were closing the casket in the house, and they threw some Israeli sand, they called it, under the body. And then that was my last vision of him laying in the casket.
What was your relationship like growing up? You know, do you have any memories of sitting on his lap when Zemiros or going places with him? So what are your stories?
Big Zemiros in our house. In Europe, we always had Zemiros. It's like crazy. You know, we sang all kinds of Zemiros. As a matter of fact, I have his tunes. I used to use his tunes. As a matter of fact, sometimes I use them when Carol might remember them, or maybe Arthur. You don't remember any of them.
Which ones, like?
Well,
why do you think I don't remember?
You're
going along, why do you think I don't remember them?
Okay, that's one of his tunes. This was a Romanian, what do you call that song? Bar song, that tune. And so that's the other one. And another one was Maya did this minute.
I remember all of them.
So these are his tunes that I carried into our marriage, because your mother had no background at all to this, any of this stuff. And the big joke we used to do, we were in Putnam Lake and we did Tzur, and in Putnam Lake, if you remember, the light had a string down, and your mother took the towel and she swung the towel and she goes so she swung the towel and she grabbed the light and
So did you used to spend a lot of time in the store with him, or did you go places?
No, I was a kid. I was in a store. I probably ran outside, do this. I mean, what could I do, you know? He didn't need me in the store. I was a little kid.
But did you ever play together, catch a ball, things like that?
No, he wasn't into that.
No, he was busy with work, or?
But once we came to America, he used to sit by the window. We lived on the 3rd floor. And he used to go down and play with the boys, the kids. And he used to sit there and he used to quell, because I was a good ball player downstairs. And he used to watch, you know, and he used to nod to me. It was good. So he got a little nachas.
What about your mother? What was life like with your mother in Europe? What was your relationship like?
In Europe?
Was she a disciplinarian?
No, my parents were very easygoing, not disciplined. I mean, they wouldn't fool around with what do you call it? You know, religion was strict, but it wasn't that. They didn't bother us.
So
we had some crazy incidents in Europe. We had problems with them. One time I went with my brother to the soccer game. My brother was a big soccer fan. I was a kid, but he took me with him. Now, to get into the game, professional game in Europe, you had to go and stay right next to an adult, and he would take you in. So I got into the game a few times with him, but my brother used to tell me that many times, because he had Goyish friends, and they used to come home, and he says that the Jews always came out of the game. There was big anti-Semitism, and so the Jews would make a circle, and they all would walk together in a group, because there was always trouble with the Goyim. So he says that invariably was problems. One yontiv, I remember, I was walking with my sister and two of her friends. There were two boys, and these two boys are Farkas brothers, Frank brothers, and these shkotzim, these bums, they came walking after us. And they just followed us. And unknowns to us, he kept spitting on the boys' coats from the back, but you didn't feel anything. It was wind. So it wasn't until we got home that they realized what these bums did. But always nasty stuff. You know, these bums are always looking for something. And then there were the Bethlehemites. My brother was friends with these Goyim. Goyish kids were friends. He was like 12. And they went, and he used to go with them with the Bethlehemites, Christmas time. And he used to walk through the streets, and they would make the crochet, and they would dress up like, they had the manger, and then they had different, they were dressed up as like shepherds, and different. And one guy was always dressed up like a Jew, and he was like a crazy one, and he dressed up with a payas and everything, and it would make him jump all over the place, and everybody laughed. Yeah. What was interesting with them was that invariably they come into people's houses, and they would sit there and they would sing, and then some of them would go in the back and then steal as what they could get. So this is a kind of mentality you're dealing with. Also, what happened with that is that the Romanians and the Hungarians, they hated each other. So they had the Bethlehemites, which were Romanians, and Bethlehemites who were Hungarians. And if they met on the street and they walked in the same way, they would take out knives, they would have big fights. So this is what I remember being, this was the Bethlehemites, this in Europe. Little tidbits, but this is what it was. It wasn't good. And then came the Hitler era, it got worse.
But before we get to the Hitler era, so what was your relationship like with your brother?
My brother and I were very close. And my mother would make sure he takes me wherever he went. And he hated that. He used to grab me and he's like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go because he would grab me and shake me. I didn't want to go with him because he was upset. He had to take care of me. He wanted to go with his buddies. But doesn't need a 7-year-old kid with him, So this was a. So I always used to make him go, and then my mother used to have a very favorite expression. And the expression was, he says, "You watch him like you take care of your own 2 eyes." That was his expression in Hungarian.
So what kind of places did he used to take you?
We used to go to play soccer in a meadow. And then they used to have a place called the Billigadur. It was like I don't know what it was, like a little hill, and they used to go down the hill. I don't know why. They're these teenagers, I think 10, 11 years old, 12. But she made him take me with him.
And what about your sister?
No, I didn't have much to do with my sister. Well, she was older. She was 7 years older. And she already was going to a higher level in school, and she was learning to be a seamstress. But she was very nice to us. She went and she made a few cents. And whenever she made a few cents, Friday she would went and bought some nice candy and everything for us, for me and my brother. So it was very nice of her. She was always very nice to us.
Did she help around the house a lot?
I guess so. She must have. I wasn't helping, my brother wasn't helping.
Would you say, so back to your mother for 1 second. So you were the youngest, did she used to baby you?
Oh yeah, they all babied me. I was the baby. Jarek, they used to call me the Jarek. Jarek is like the little kid. I was the little kid, the Jarek. So you could expect too much from the Jarek. Right. So that's what it was. But she used me when she needed me. You know, I would take food to my cousin Lily to the hospital when she had that what do you call fever? Rheumatic fever. And she had that fever, so I would go. She would give me food, and I would take it to her for dinner, lunch. So I would go there, and I would give her the food, and I would lay under the bed. You know, I would hang around there for a little. Then I bring the food, what do you call it, home, the stuff. So I did certain things. I did certain things that I could help my mother with. Sometimes like I said, I used to take the chickens to the shaychet, and I used to take different things when I need help.
How did you dress in Europe?
Oh, we wore short pants. We always wore short pants. And in the summertime, we never wore shoes. We only walked around without shoes. We went to school without shoes. And what I didn't like in school was that they would put oil on the floor in the classrooms, black oil. So when you walked in, your feet got old. You know, but nobody wore shoes. You know, they saved money on the shoes. And so yeah, we dressed very casually. We had a very nice Strung. Strung was a place where you can, on the river. We had a river going through our town, and in that river you had a place to swim. A nice area to swim. It was all built up. It was very nice, and so used to go down there, you know, on a Sunday to swim. And
but you never learned to swim.
No, because they did that stupid stuff with me. They threw me in the water, and I was afraid. You know, they started teaching somebody to me, you don't throw a kid into the water. Some places you could, but others you don't. It doesn't necessarily work that way. So I took many years before when I came to America. So I went to a camp here, and then they taught me how to swim.
So during the summers over there, your parents were working, you just wandered around all day?
Right. We had very short summers there. It was very short summer. 2 months was the whole summer. It got cold. By September it was cold.
Did you have friends?
I had friends, I guess, kids my age. I didn't have quote-unquote friends.
Any you remember?
No. No.
I guess you were pretty young. Did the Jewish people dress differently than the not Jewish people?
Well, we wore tzitzis. We used to have a little payas. Not big, but we used to have a little payas. And
you wore a kippah everywhere you went?
Not a kippah. We wore kippahs. We wore hats. You know.
But were you standing out because the other kids didn't wear hats?
No, the Jewish kids wore caps.
But the non-Jewish kids, did they wear caps?
No, non-Jewish kids.
So you could tell who the Jewish kids were?
Oh yeah, I knew who the Jewish kids were. That's why I always picked on the Jewish kids. They knew exactly who's who.
Well, I guess the tzitzis would be a big giveaway.
Yeah, there was. We didn't wear it outside. We didn't wear the tzitzis outside.
Oh, so you didn't?
No, we didn't wear the tzitzis outside. But I don't remember too much of that. But obviously they knew exactly who was Jewish, who wasn't Jewish. You know, it was very obvious. They knew who was Jewish. Jewish kids were very smart. The only trouble is that, you know, they were very envious of the Jews. Because eventually the Jews started to excel and they did different things. They went into business. But the best thing happened to us is we got the hell out of there.
So what was it like then when the Nazis started taking over?
Oh, 1930s.
When did it start?
1933. 1933 it started. I just heard it because my dad used to listen to the radio, and they used to. I heard them older people used to discuss things, and my father used to. Then I remember 1935. 1935 there was the Spanish Civil War. I remember that because they were talking about the Civil War, you know, with Franco, and so the Nazis backed Franco, and the Russians and some American Lincoln Brigade from here, they went there and fought for the side of the partisans against Franco. But eventually Franco won. The Nazis won. You see it in For Whom the Bell Tolls, if you watch that movie. So that was from 1935, 36, and then it started to go bad. 1938, it got kind of pretty sticky, because then 1938 came Kristallnacht, November 1938. Well, it didn't take long, but it soon got to us also. It went all over Europe. So what happened was, I told you, that they, about, I don't know how many hundreds, thousand motorcycles came into our town. They were called brown shirts. Brown shirts were the Romanian Nazis. They were called the brown shirts. Vashgarishta, they called Vashgarishta. So they took over our town, and they were pretty nasty. You know, they did bad stuff in the town, beat up Jews, destroyed businesses, and that's when my mother told me that we had a tenant, a Gentile, and he went out and he took down the sign, Klein's grocery store. So they didn't know who lived there. And that's when my mother and father told us they were to keep quiet for 3 days. We were not to talk until these bums left the town. So from Friday till Monday, when they finally left, we were sitting there in fear, very quiet, no talking, so that they don't know anybody knew somebody was in there. Anyhow, that was our thing with Kristallnacht.
And one of your neighbors took down the sign?
Yes, a Gentile. He went up and took down Klein's grocery store. So they didn't know that a Jew owned that.
Were they killing Jews at that point, or just beating them up or doing damage?
I don't know if they killed them necessarily. They did damage. They hurt them. If they killed them, nobody would care. In other words, they didn't do anything about it. The police disappeared. The army disappeared. It was chaos. And it was a very difficult time. And we had, my father had a big iron about this size, all iron, heavy iron, and he put on the door. to our house. So you couldn't break through that thing, even if you wanted to. But that was the worst part with that Kristallnacht business.
But Kristallnacht didn't actually take place in Romania. You're talking about afterwards when things started to get bad.
Yeah, but it spread. Started in Nazi Germany, and then it went from country to country. It finally reached us. So it finally reached us, like anything else. And within the next few months, after that was my story with our neighbor. Our neighbors came to my dad, and he said, "Mr. Klein, I want you to come to the shul this Shabbat. Make sure you're there, because I have a cousin, a relative coming from America." So my father says, "Okay," and he knew that my father had been here in America. So my father met the man, and I have to put these things together because during a conversation it must have happened that it came out that my father was in the First World War. So the man must have said to my father, and I guess he was knowledgeable. He told him, "Did you get your bonus?" So my father says, "What bonus?" He says, "Yes, under Hoover, President Hoover, Congress passed a law that everybody who served in the First World War will get $500. So my father, after Shabbat, sat down and wrote a letter to Bucharest, to the American embassy, and wrote to them and said, "Is it true that I'm entitled to $500? I am a veteran. This is my serial number, and that's everything. And I'm an American citizen." So he gets back a letter within a few days. He says, "Yeah, come on up to Bucharest and get your money." So my father goes up there and says to them, "I want to go back." So he goes to my father, "Yeah, go back. Who's stopping you? You're a citizen. Go back." So, but I can't go without my family. Now it was a problem, because somewhere in the 20s, they changed the law, and your spouse didn't automatically become a citizen. So now they had to write to the State Department in Washington to find out when they got married in September 1921, what was the law. Anyhow, eventually we got an answer back, and in 1921, the law was still that your spouse automatically was a citizen. It was changed after that. So that was a lifesaver. They wrote my father back. He says, "Come down, you can all go back." But it wasn't that simple, because between all these things were happening, all of a sudden, they came after us and they wanted our house. We couldn't pay the what do you call that? The mortgage. We couldn't pay the interest, whatever was involved. So they decided that they're going to take the house back. So we lost the house. They just grabbed the house. They boom, 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 boom. You know how they do when the foreclosure? They would march down and bang the drums. They took the house. We all, 5 of us had to move out to my aunt, to my sister, my wife's sister, my father's sister, who also had 5, and they lived in an apartment not far from us. So we all moved in. They let us move in with them. So we all moved with them.
So when you lost the house, you lost the store, you lost the boarding house, everything.
Everything. I see. I wasn't. So then the war broke out. So there was nowhere to follow up. I probably could have gotten something, because even if they took even if they took the, what do you call it, even if they took even if they took the house, it wouldn't have made any much difference. You know, we had nowhere to go, nothing to do. It was just a question of time until we can straighten out how to get the hell out of there. Of course, my parents were under a lot of pressure. My parents were under a lot of pressure, and but it must have been very difficult for them under those circumstances, with 5 kids, 5 people, no money, no nothing. And so we just, what do you call it? So what happened was, so I didn't feel anything, but they were under tremendous pressure. Now, so we went ahead and we came to we went to yeah, okay, so we went there, and so in it now, my father was in a mode of negotiations with the American embassy. Okay, it was the American embassy, was negotiations. How can we get out? What's the procedure? What can we do? So they told us to all come up to Bucharest. Go up to Bucharest. So we all went up to Bucharest, and they took pictures of us all. I show you the passport. You ever see my passport?
No.
I'll show you my passport, and you will see the Nazi stamp in there, from the Nazis. I'll show it to you afterwards. What happened is that we took. I lost my thought for a minute. So we lost our. So we came and we took the.
You were in Bucharest. You took the pictures.
Yeah, took the pictures. They set us up. They gave us the passport. And what happened was with that passport is they took the $500 and they paid for us for our trip with the Rapid. The Rapid was the fast train that's running from Turkey or whatever right across Europe to Paris, and it stopped in our town. It was the last stop in Romania.
The embassy did this arrangement?
Yes, they bought us the tickets. It was very nice of them. I think it was a Jewish guy working in that embassy, if I remember my father mentioning that. Anyhow, they took care of getting us the tickets. They in Paris, they set us up in a hotel, and what was nice about that hotel, it was circular staircase. My brother and I were playing around on the circus, sliding down and everything. And then I remember we went out, it was like Friday night, we went outside and we saw the gendarmes, the police, and all these nice stores. And that's what we did. So we took care of, so they took care of that. And then they got us a train from Paris to Cherbourg. Cherbourg is in the northern part of France. It's a seaport. And they booked for us the SS Aquitania. The SS Aquitania was a sister ship of the Queen Mary. It was a nice big ship. So they booked us passage on that ship. And they booked us passage on that ship, and it took us 4.5 days to cross.
You were in steerage? You were in the bottom?
I don't know if I was steerage, I don't know. Is that what it was?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
I don't know, whatever it was, it paid for all of us. And we pulled into the dock on 42nd Street or 40th Street in Manhattan, and and I told you that my Arnold's aunt his aunt was a sister of his mother. So they wrote to them to help us out and to pick us up. So they were there, and they took us to their house in the Bronx, and they set us up, and we stayed with them for 2 weeks, and they had 2 daughters, older girls, and they moved out, and they gave us their rooms. So we stayed there for 2 weeks, and then they got us an apartment in the Bronx, where we stayed there for like 25 years in that apartment. You know, so
they got you the apartment?
Yes, they helped us.
How were you able to rent the apartment? You had money coming in already after 2 weeks?
I don't know. I have to assume that they might have helped us a little bit, but we paid them all back. Whatever helped us. My mother went to work. I told you she did housework, cleaning, offices. My sister was working sewing. My sister was a seamstress, so she was able to work for the necktie industry, and she did that. So we had a few dollars coming in, and we went on welfare a little bit, you know. So they helped us, but we couldn't stay on there because they were working. We didn't want a problem. Those days used to come up to the house and make sure nobody's working. Now the whole world is on.
Yeah. You tell a story about the train ride from Romania to Paris. So what was that train ride?
Yes. So now on a Tuesday night we got on the train, and all my father's parents and siblings and whatever, they came. They took us to the train in our town, and they took us and they made us board the train. We got on the train, and thank God everything was okay. But it must have been terrible because my father Jr. never see his parents again. It must have been heart-rending.
Did they really know that they were going to be killed, though?
No, they didn't know that. But was a 75-year-old? What chances have you ever see them again?
Right.
Right. I mean, Hitler era, things were rotten. You know, all you have to do is be careful. So it wasn't good. Anyhow, we went. So we got on the train, and we got past Romania, and we got past Hungary. Right. So now we came into Austria. Austria was already under the Anschluss. Anschluss was the Nazis already conquered Austria. They conquered Austria. They adopted Austria. So what happened is that I was a little kid, about 9 at that point. I was sitting on my mother's lap, and we had to pull down the compartment. In every compartment, we had to pull down the shade. But as a little kid, I took the shade, I pulled it over, and I looked. And I looked up, and all these big buildings, and all I saw was swastikas in every window. Swastikas were flying all over the place. Wow. So I saw that, and then at one point the door opened, and in came this Nazi bum. This Nazi came in, the conductor, and he gives a passport, visa. So my father gives him the passport. He goes, Juden. So I got Juden. He says, I rose from the train. So my father spoke good German. My father says to me, he says, if I get off the train, I'm going to call the American Embassy in Vienna. So with that, this bum took the passport and he stalked out of there. And he went somewhere. He must have gone to higher up, or how to handle this, right? In the meantime, they were taking off all Jews from the train with people with visas, whatever, took them off, took everything they had, whatever. Who knows if they ever got back on the train, whether they went to the concentration camps. A little while passed, and he came back, opened up the door, and he took the passport, and he flung it on this floor. And he slammed the door and left us alone. Thank God we were okay so far, but we're not out of there yet. So but then finally, after a while, the train started to go. And we went through Austria, we went through Germany, and now we come to Switzerland.
They didn't bother you again in Germany?
No. No, we got through Austria, they didn't check us in Germany. So what happened is that this bum, once we hit Switzerland, oh man, my father was so happy. It was like a ton off your back, because now you knew we were safe. Once we hit Austria, not Austria, once we hit Switzerland, we were safe. Because after that was only France, and we were still safe over there. So that was a tremendous relief for us. I didn't know, but I could imagine how relieved they were. Well, you know, you're a kid, you don't relate to these things. But when you hindsight, when you look back, you say, wow, they must have gone through some hell of an agony until they knew that the children were safe and everybody was safe. So that's how we got France. So when in France, we got that hotel, and we stayed there. It was very nice. We spent Shabbat in that hotel. And then Sunday they took us by train to Cherbourg.